When the boom rattled my windows that night, I genuinely thought a transformer blew. The quiet street jolted awake, porch lights flicked on, dogs barked, and neighbors opened doors like prairie dogs popping from burrows. And there she was, Mrs. Chancellor, our neighborhood's self-appointed queen, her pristine silver bob frayed like she'd been struck by lightning. She stood in her driveway, robe smudged with soot, pointing at her chimney and shrieking something about defective logs and dangerous lumber suppliers. But I knew the truth. I'd known for weeks, because those weren't ordinary logs she burned tonight. Te were mine. Or at least, they used to be. I didn't start this war. But when someone keeps creeping into your backyard like they're auditioning for a spy movie, you either let them win or you defend your territory with brains, not fists. But before I explain how we got here, let's rewind. When I moved here after my wife passed, I wanted peace. A steady job designing industrial cooling systems from home, a backyard workshop, and my favorite therapy, splitting firewood under the autumn sun. Honest work, simple life. And at Fierce, that's exactly what I got. Mr. Hollis next door brought homemade apple butter every fall. Kids rode bikes, neighbors waved during evening walks. And nobody cared if your lawn was half an inch too tall or if your trash bin wasn't facing magnetic north on collection day. Then she moved in. Evelyn Chancellor, middle-aged, power walk posture, pearl necklace, even during yard work. The type who believes clipboards are weapons and HOA rules are holy scripture. Within a month, she ran the HOA. Funny thing, no one remembered voting. She just appeared at meetings, holding a binder thicker than a law book, and somehow boom, she was in charge. And boy, did she love power. She measured hedges with a ruler, photographed garbage cans, emailed gentle reminders about mailbox paint, and acted like we lived in a gated suburban utopia. Not a regular neighborhood with squirrels and opinions. My woodpile sat neatly stacked behind my garden shed. Been in that exact spot for 6 years. I split each log myself, folk that burned slow and smelled like autumn nostalgia. Then one afternoon, Madam HOA marched up my driveway like a general storming a battlefield. "Mr. Grant," she chirped, "your stacked timber violates community uniform view standards. It must be entirely concealed from public perspective." "It's behind a shed," I said, confused. "Yes," she replied, "but if you stand far enough to the left, tilt your head, and squint, you might see it." I genuinely thought she was joking. I tightened the stack, pushed it even closer to the fence, and shrugged it off. That should have been the end. But tyrants don't quit when you comply. They escalate when they feel ignored. A week later, I noticed the pile looked thinner. Not by much at first, but each day, a few logs went missing. I'll keep count. It's a habit. Wood is warmth. Wood is work. You don't forget how much you stacked. At first, I blamed raccoons. Then, a neighbor kid. That maybe I was losing it. But when half a road disappeared overnight, I knew someone was treating my yard like a free-to-grab convenience store. So I tested a theory. I marked logs discreetly, nothing dangerous. Just tiny tool marks only I'd spot. And I waited. That night, motion lights flickered. A shadow glided along my fence line. And the next morning, 3 marked logs gone. Tekika. Footprints. Small, neat, and unmistakably women's dress shoes. There was only one person in this neighborhood who did midnight patrols in heels. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Reason doesn't work with people who worship control. Instead, I set a trap not to harm, but to teach, because some lessons don't stick until they smoke. I didn't call the sheriff. I didn't storm over and demand my logs back. People like Evelyn Chancellor don't respond to logic. They weaponize it. So I did what any calm, rational homeowner with an engineering brain and a petty streak would do. I prepared. First step, proof. I may be stubborn, but I'm not stupid. If I accused her without evidence, she'd twist it into me harassing her. And trust me, she loved turning neighbors into villains. So I installed 2 discreet security cams. Nothing fancy, just compact, dusk-friendly units tucked under roof corners and inside a decorative bird feeder. Thanks woodworking skills. One pointed at the wood rack, the other at my side gate. Night 1. Raccoon parade. Night 2. A cat gave me a heart attack by knocking a shovel over. Night 3. Bingo. 12:41 a.m. A figure glided through the yard like she practiced stealth in a mirror. Bay trench coat, hair wrapped tight, and those infamous clicky heels. Who the heck steals firewood in heels? She moved with the confidence of someone who believed she had immunity, stacking my logs neatly like she was helping organize my life. And when she whispered, "No one will miss a few," community harmony, I nearly choked on my late-night tea. Community harmony, lady, this is timber, not a charitable donation box. She loaded the wood into her SUV, brushed imaginary dust off her sleeves, and left like she'd accomplished some noble moral mission. I replayed the footage twice. It was surreal watching a grown adult steal logs with the same seriousness Navy SEALs use in documentaries. I could have confronted her. I could have emailed the HOA board. But no. This wasn't just theft. This was hypocrisy, dressed in pearls and power. And poetic justice was calling. There happened to be a mid-month HOA meeting the next evening. Fate was practically handing me popcorn. I arrived early and sat close enough to hear Evelyn's perfume say authority. She walked in like Cleopatra arriving by chariot, clipboard clutched, smile sharpened. "Let's address ongoing violations," she announced, like a judge handing out life sentences. Then she hit me with it. "Homeowner, Mr. Grant, continues to store combustible materials unsafely and visibly. Effective immediately, a fine of $200. I stayed silent, arms crossed, jaw relaxed. She was expecting outrage. Instead, I asked calmly, "Evelyn, when exactly did you observe my yard?" She smirked. "In the last 48 hours. Perfect answer. So," I said, loud enough for everyone, "when you stole half my wood, was that during community outreach hours or off the clock?" The room froze. Her face drained like someone unplugged her personality. "That accusation is outrageous. C'est is napped." "Is it?" I tapped my phone. Thumbnail. Her face illuminated by moonlight, arm deep in my wood stack. Half the room gasped. One guy actually whispered, "No freaking way." She shrilled, "You can't film me." "On my property, I can." I smiled, slow and calm. "It's legal." I checked. "A woman near the back," muttered. "This explains why she's been bragging about having a new firewood supplier." Lichter, real, genuine laughter in the temple of Hacho-Hadum. Evelyn slammed her binder shut. "You'll regret this." No one followed her when she stormed out, not even her loyal sidekick, Mrs. Hawthorne, who suddenly found the carpet fascinating, with the whole neighborhood now whispering. I expected her to retreat. But bullies don't quit, they regroup. I knew she'd be back for more wood. And I was ready. Not with danger. Never harm. Just consequences with a dash of engineering flair. I spent 2 nights building something special in my workshop. A little surprise collection that would make future stolen logs memorable. No flames, no injuries. Husk science, a lesson designed to sting ego, not skin. Because sometimes life doesn't teach through anger. So may teens. It teaches through embarrassment. And sure enough, on a cold night, with the street silent and the moon shining, her heels clicked back into my yard again. But this time, she didn't just take firewood. She walked straight into the moment her ego would ignite. The night she came back, I almost admired her commitment to villainy almost. Picture it, crisp winter air, streetlights humming, the kind of quiet where even stray leaves hold still. I sat in my kitchen sipping cocoa, like a man awaiting a nature documentary's climax. Tent, tap, tap. Her heels again. If stealth was a sport, she was competing in the noisy shoe division. The camera app blinked awake on my phone. There she was. Trench coat, flashlight tucked under her arm, reusable grocery bag in hand, like she was about to shop locally from my woodpile again. If she'd worn night vision goggles, I might have actually applauded. But no, she went with spalounge, chic burglar aesthetic. She crouched, plucking logs with this "look at me" saving the neighborhood expression, stacking them neatly, and in that pile, my new inventions. Hollow cores, harmless but dramatic flash ingredients, disguised perfectly. They wouldn't hurt a soul, but they'd announce themselves like a magician with a flair for chaos. She hauled the logs into her SUV trunk with the dignity of a queen reclaiming tribute. Then she whispered again. "And 'tis time." The mic caught it perfectly. "If they won't listen, I'll force this community to behave." Good, not theft, heroic tyranny. She dusted her hands, shut her trunk, and strutted down my driveway like she'd solved crime. Then she did the most delightfully ironic thing. She paused, inspected my lawn for leaves, and shook her head disapprovingly. "Ma'am, you just stole from my yard. But yes, by all means, critique the landscaping." Say lift. Her car eased silently down the street and disappeared. I sat there grinning like a kid who'd just installed a whoopee cushion under a throne. The explosion wasn't violent, just dramatic, more theatrical than harmful. Think blacksmith workshop pop, not action movie Fireball, around 9:15 p.m. the next evening, while I watched old engineering videos. Yeah, I'm that guy. I heard a muffled pop, followed by a shriek so sharp it could cut glass. Then another crack. Then a muffled whoomph from somewhere down the street. I stepped outside. Neighbors already gathered like pigeons around crumbs of chaos. Smoke puffed from Evelyn's chimney like she'd summoned a tiny volcano god. Her perfect holiday wreath drooped, charred at the edges. And standing in her yard, there she was, Evelyn Chancellor, robed like a dramatic opera singer mid-raggedy, hair-frizzed cheeks smeared in charcoal streaks of defeat. "It exploded!" she screamed at a firefighter. "My logs combusted. Malfunctioning lumber." The firefighter, bless him, fought a smirk. Sometimes, if something foreign gets inside the wood, ignition can happen. "Foreign," she sputtered. "I sourced those logs from..." She stopped. Too late, her eye slid toward me. I raised my coffee mug. She glared like she wanted to turn me into mulch. Neighbors whispered. Phones recorded. The HOA treasurer looked like her soul left her body from second-hand embarrassment. One kid said loudly, "Is this the lady who yelled at me for sidewalk chalk?" That was the moment Evelyn realized she'd lost the crowd. Control was slipping through her pearl-ringed fingers like glitter at a kid's craft table. By morning, the group chat was a festival of chaos. Evelyn had fireworks in her fireplace. Was that an uprising? Logs don't explode on their own. Right. Evelyn tried damage control. She posted a dramatic paragraph. My home was sabotaged by hostile forces resisting neighborhood improvement values. Neighborhood improvement values. Lady, you stole firewood, not protected national secrets. By afternoon, an HOA inspection team toured her property. She paced behind them, whispering legal threats like a villain rehearsing for her court cameo. And then came the envelope taped to my door. Summons HOA emergency hearing. Her signature bold and furious at the bottom. Oh, she wanted a courtroom. Fine, I'd bring evidence. Receipts. And the gift of truth. Because the thing about tyrants, they don't crumble when you push. They crumble when you hold up a mirror. And she was about to face one the size of the town clubhouse. At that meeting, she didn't just attack me. She attacked everyone. And that's the night the neighborhood finally chose sides. A spoiler, she did not like the outcome. The day of the emergency HOA hearing felt like the calm before a storm, except the storm wore pearls, weaponized bylaws, and drove a silver Lexus. I walked into the community clubhouse early folder in hand. Evidence neatly printed. Video thumbnails ready. The room had that awkward hush people get before courtroom drama. A few neighbors waved. Some whispered. One older guy nodded like, "Oh, this is gonna be good." Then the doors opened. Evelyn Chancellor swept in like she was arriving at her own coronation. clipboard pressed to her chest like a shield. Her lips were tight, but her eyes wild with determination. Behind her sat a shrinking entourage. The 2 board members who once treated her like royalty, now staring at their lap like they were attending a funeral. The new HOA president, Mr. Cole's soft-spoken, retired lawyer type, cleared his throat. "We're here to address a serious matter," he began. Before he could continue, Evelyn shot to her feet. "I'll speak first." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but fury. She turned toward the room like a general addressing troops she assumed were loyal. "This community is under attack." Someone coughed. It sounded suspiciously like a laugh. She continued, "A homeowner. This man," she jabbed a manicured finger at me, "has engaged in malicious acts, including booby-trapping Firewood with dangerous substances, tampering, and recording neighbors without authorization. This is sabotage, harassment." I raised my hand calmly. "Madam former President, Primera Saeed, gently before you accuse me of running a terrorist lumber program, perhaps we should review the sequence of events." The crowd snickered. She flushed crimson. Mr. Cole nodded. "Mr. Grant, you may respond." I stood, opened my folder slowly, theatrically, even, and placed a neatly printed photos on the table. There she was, on paper. Abilene. Those RMM in my yard. Car trunk open. Log in and... Caught like a raccoon with pearls, a murmur rolled through the room. I tapped my phone, screen lighting up with a still frame from the video. A few gasps. Someone whispered, "She really did it." Evelyn clutched her binder like it might jump out and defend her. That's fabricated." "Then," I replied, "you should have no problem signing a statement saying you've never entered my property." Her jaw locked. She said nothing. I continued. "Not only did I not set a trap, I simply enhanced a few logs from my own workshop demonstrations." "I didn't hand them to you, Evelyn." "You stole them." "That's irrelevant," she snapped. "Dangerous materials." I cut in softly. "You keep saying dangerous, yet the fire inspector report, which I have here, says no hazardous intent, just a small ignition reaction." I lifted the paper. Even from Rosawena, the official seal glinted. A neighbor raised a hand. "So the wood only exploded because she took it?" "Yes," I replied. Another voice, like karma logs. Laughter burst across the room, the kind people try to hold in and completely fail. Evelyn slammed her hands on the table. "This is a conspiracy. You're all ungrateful. I protected this neighborhood. Without me, everything falls apart." Mr. Cole set his glasses down. "Evelyn, the board has reviewed the footage and statements. You removed property, and you attempted retaliation with false accusations." Her eyes darted around the room. No, you can't do this." He raised his hand, steady and calm. "All in favor of removing Mrs. Chancellor from the HOA permanently. Hans Rose more Tanalf." Then 2/3, then nearly every hand in the room. Even her former board allies lifted theirs reluctantly, looking like children abandoning an upturned boat. Someone whispered, "Rest in peace. Clipboard power." Mr. Cole nodded. Motion passes. Evelyn stood trembling, eyes glossy with disbelief. "You'll regret this," she hissed, voice cracking, dignity slipping like sand. I gently picked up the binder she left on the table and handed it to her. "You forgot your rule." You could feel the oxygen leave the room. She snatched it, spun on her heels, and stormed out again. But this time, no one followed. No audience. No empire. Just the quiet click of the door closing on her reign. I thought that would be the end, but tyrants never exit gracefully. And Evelyn, she came back not with power, but with desperation, and her downfall was about to turn personal. You would think losing an HOA throne would humble someone, maybe lead to gardening, yoga, or quiet reflection. Not Ebeline. 3 days after her dramatic dethroning, she launched what I can only describe as a one-woman neighborhood propaganda tour. Handwritten flyers on neon paper appeared everywhere. Neighborhood integrity is in danger. Former HOA leader betrayed by corrupt mob. Beware firewood terrorism. Yes, firewood terrorism. I nearly spit out my coffee laughing. Then came the Facebook posts, paragraphs so long the read more button needed a nap. She claimed she was a victim of sabotage, political persecution, and Mem, this isn't the Hunger Games. This is a cul-de-sac. The neighborhood mostly ignored her, except for Mr. Hollis, who commented, "Did your chimney commit treason too, or just the logs?" Legend. By the end of the week, the new board had enough. They issued a polite but firm cease and desist, banning her from attending meetings or using HOA resources for 6 months. I heard the screaming from my porch. It sounded like someone losing a battle with a vacuum cleaner, a cat, and their own ego at the same time. She tried to rally support. 2 houses in, someone called the sheriff for persistent emotional leaf-blowing, whatever that means, and she retreated. But she wasn't done. No. The universe saved her best act for Act 3. 2 days later, early morning, a shout ripped through the neighborhood. I walked outside to see water gushing from Evelyn's basement windows. Her water heater had burst, turning her foundation into an indoor swimming pool. She stood outside in slippers, hair wild, yelling at a plumber on the phone. "You need to come immediately. This is an emergency." Pau said, "What do you mean? I'm not eligible for HOA emergency services anymore." Yes, she forgot. She got herself fired. I genuinely tried not to smile. Premedified, the same neighbors she once threatened over mailbox paint now strolled by with giving sympathetic but overwhelmingly satisfied nods. Rough week. Evelyn, Mrs. Miller, petting her Pomeranian like a villain in a spy movie. 3 weeks later, a big red for sale sign appeared in her yard. Rumor said she was moving to a more civilized community. Translation, one where she could rule again. On moving day, the whole block suddenly found reasons to be outside. Walking dogs, checking mail, watering plants we'd all forgotten existed. Even old Mr. Jenkins pulled out a lawn chair, pointed it at the street like he'd paid for front row seats. Evelyn stomped around, directing movers like a drill sergeant. Finally, she pulled her SUV to the curb. Before leaving, she rolled down her window and delivered her final dramatic monologue. "You think you've won? This place will crumble without leadership. You haven't seen the last of me." I raised my glass, sweet tea, but dramatic nonetheless. Safe travels, Evelyn. And hey, remember, don't steal wood in the next neighborhood. Several neighbors choked trying not to laugh. Her tires screeched as she sped away, ego trailing behind like exhaust smoke. The second she turned the corner, the neighborhood broke into applause. Even the mail carrier clapped. I just sat back in my chair, smiling like a man who'd finally removed a splinter the size of a telephone pole from community life. Peace had returned. Maple Hollow felt like a neighborhood again, not a monarch's kingdom. But the story didn't end there, because months later, when autumn rolled back around and the smell of fresh-cut wood filled the air, guess who came walking back up my driveway? Not for war. Not for power. For something much stranger. Autumn rolled back in, like a peaceful apology from the universe. Cool mornings, golden leaves, wood-splitting season. 4 months after Evelyn sped out of Maple Hollow like a dramatic villain in a mid-budget soap opera, life felt normal. People waved without fear. Kids drew chalk art without being cited for sidewalk disorder. Someone even put a pink flamingo in their yard just because they could. It was glorious. Then one chilly afternoon, while I was in my backyard sanding down a new bench, I heard footsteps near my side gate. Slow, cautious, almost embarrassed. Primera turned, and there she was, Evelyn, not in battle-ready pearls, not holding her clipboard like a sword, just jeans, sweater, sunglasses pushed on top of her head. She looked human, tired human, not HOA demigod. Primetta blinked. Well, if it isn't the Duchess of Regulations. To my shock, c'est chouclade. A tiny, weary laugh. I suppose I earned that. I leaned against my workbench, still unsure whether I was hallucinating. You planning to reclaim your throne? No, she sighed. I think that castle burned down, along with part of my fireplace. We both looked at the fire pit. Awkward silence floated between us. Then she cleared her throat, clutching a small cardboard box. I came to pick up some old gardening decorations I left. The new owners said they were in your shed. Ah, that explained it. I walked with her to the shed. Cautiously, like approaching a retired dragon, she opened the box, dusted off a ceramic bird statue, stared at it for a long beat. Finally, she asked quietly, "Did you hate me that much?" That question didn't sound like the Evelyn who once ruled with memos and yardstick fury. It sounded human, hurting. I folded my arms. I didn't hate you. I hated the power you thought you had. She nodded slowly. I thought control meant safety. I thought order kept people from falling apart. Her voice cracked slightly. After my divorce, routine was all I had. Structure felt like protection. Abet passet. Control wasn't about power. It was her armor. For the first time, I saw not a tyrant, but a person who'd lost more than she admitted. Evelyn, I said quietly, structure's fine, but a neighborhood isn't an army. A tiny smile appeared. Apparently, they don't respond well to dictator-like policies. You live, you learn, I said. Sometimes you learn through smoke. This time, she genuinely laughed. Soft, self-aware. It was weird. Good weird, but weird. She exhaled, shoulders deflating. You know, they call it Firewood, Karen, online. I smirked. Could be worse. You could be sprinkler schedule, Karen. She cracked a smile. Small victories. Box in hand. She turned to leave. Then paused. I'm sorry, she said, quietly, not theatrically, for the trouble, the fines, the theft, and the explosion, I offered. She shook her head, grinning, especially that part. She stepped through the gate, not marching, not storming off, just walking like someone finally put their sword down. Take care, Tom, she said. You too, Evelyn. And just like that, she left, truly left. No threats, no final speech, no lingering spotlight, just a person learning to move on. Life returned to neighborly normal. Kids, road scooters, people decorated yards without panic. We had 3 seasonal cookouts and 0 citations for grill smoke. Every so often, someone jokingly offered me a log and whispered, "Careful, don't ignite the HOA again." The fire pit still burns, most evenings crackling, peaceful, warm. Neighbors wander over, bringing marshmallows or beer, and sometimes, when the sparks float upward, I think about that bizarre season and smile. Not because of revenge, but because we won something bigger. Our neighborhood back, our peace back, and our sense of humor. Turns out, when petty power meets patience and creativity, justice doesn't de just happen. It pops. Literally. If this story taught me anything, it's simple. Respect is earned, not enforced. And if someone keeps stealing your firewood, well, there's more than one way to spark change.